On August 15th, 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio picked up a signal so powerful, so precise, and so impossible that the astronomer who found it grabbed a red pen and wrote one word in the margin. Wow! That signal lasted exactly 72 seconds. It matched the hydrogen frequency perfectly, the one frequency scientists believe an intelligent civilization would use to announce its existence. And in nearly 50 years, since that night, no one has ever detected it again. Not once, not from that direction, not from any direction. It came, it screamed across the void of space, and it vanished. Wow signal, 1977, mystery. Now here is what most people do not know. The explanation you were probably taught, that it was just interference or a satellite or some boring technical glitch. That explanation has been systematically dismantled by the very scientists who spent decades trying to prove it. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why the most rational minds on Earth cannot rule out the possibility that something out there was trying to talk to us. The universe is not only queerer than we suppose, but queerer than we can suppose. What you are about to discover will change the way you look at the night sky forever. Before we talk about the signal itself, you need to understand the machine that caught it, because without this context, nothing that follows will make sense. In the 1970s, Ohio State University operated a radio telescope called the Big Ear. It was not sleek. It was not glamorous. It looked like a massive metal football field bolted to the ground. But the Big Ear had one job, and it did that job brilliantly. It listened. It scanned the sky for radio signals that did not belong to Earth. This was part of a project called SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Every night, the Big Ear would slowly sweep across a strip of the sky as the Earth rotated, recording whatever radio frequencies it picked up. Most of it was noise, cosmic static, the leftover hum of the Big Bang. Occasionally a satellite or a military transmission would bleed through. But the scientists knew what human noise looked like. They knew what natural noise looked like. Listen, detect, analyze. They had filters. They had baselines. They had years of experience reading the data. And on one August night, something appeared in that data that matched none of their known categories. Something that, by every measurable standard, should not have been there. And the man who found it almost missed it entirely. His name was Jerry Amon. He was a volunteer astronomer, not even full-time staff, just a guy who loved space enough to spend his evenings reviewing printouts of radio data. And the data came on long sheets of paper covered in numbers and letters. Each character represented the intensity of a radio signal at a specific frequency. Most characters were ones and twos, background noise, meaningless static. But on that printout, Amon saw something that made his hands stop, a sequence that reads 6 equage 5. In the coding system they used, that meant the signal started weak, rapidly intensified to a level 30 times louder than the background noise, peaked at an almost unbelievable strength, and then faded back down. The entire event lasted 72 seconds. 72 seconds. That duration was not random. It was exactly the amount of time the Big Ear's beam would take to sweep past a fixed point in space as the Earth rotated. If that just blew your mind, hit like and subscribe, because the next facts are even crazier. Seriously, you are not ready. A signal lasting exactly 72 seconds meant the source was not moving. It was stationary, out there, fixed in one location in the sky. Amon circled the sequence in red ink and wrote one word in the margin. Wow! And that single word became the name of the most famous unexplained signal in the history of science. But the truly disturbing part is not that we found it. It is what happened when we went looking for it again. Now, what I am about to tell you sounds impossible, but it has been proven. The WOW signal did not arrive at some random frequency. It arrived at 1,420 megahertz. And if that number means nothing to you, let me explain why it sent shockwaves through the scientific community. 1,420 megahertz is the natural emission frequency of hydrogen. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. Every star, every nebula, every gas cloud radiates at this frequency. It is, in a very real sense, the universe's default channel. And for decades before the WOW signal, Scientists had theorized that if an intelligent civilization wanted to send a message across the cosmos, this is exactly the frequency they would choose. Hydrogen frequency, universal channel. Why? Because any civilization advanced enough to build a radio telescope would know about hydrogen. They would know that other civilizations would be listening at that frequency. It is the one channel that every intelligent species in the universe would logically monitor. In 1959, two physicists named Giuseppe Cocconi and Philip Morrison published a landmark paper arguing this exact point. They called 1420 megahertz the cosmic waterhole, the natural meeting place for civilizations separated by light years. And 18 years later, the WOW signal arrived on that exact frequency. Coincidence? The math says probably not, and the next discovery makes this one look boring by comparison. Stop and think about this for a second. If someone sends you a message, what do? You look for more messages. You listen harder. You point every antenna you have in that exact direction and you wait. That is exactly what scientists did, and they heard absolutely nothing. In the days following the discovery, the big ear was repositioned to scan the same patch of sky. Nothing. Other radio telescopes around the world were alerted. They pointed their dishes at the exact coordinates. Nothing. Over the following years, more than 100 dedicated follow-up observations were conducted by teams across multiple countries. Every single one came back empty. The signal had appeared once for 72 seconds, and then the universe went silent again. As the legendary astronomer Carl Sagan noted, the universe is a pretty big place. If it's just us, seems like an awful waste of space. Robert Gray, an independent researcher, became so obsessed with finding the signal again that he spent over 2 decades of his own time and money organizing search campaigns. He used the Very Large Array in New Mexico. He used the Mount Pleasant Radio Observatory in Tasmania. Search nothing, silence. Every attempt produced the same result. Dead silence from that exact location. It was as if someone had shouted into the void once and then gone completely dark. And the question that haunted every scientist involved was brutally simple. Why only once? Here is where the story takes a dark turn, because over the decades, scientists have desperately tried to explain the WOW signal with ordinary causes, and one by one, every single explanation has fallen apart. First theory, it was a satellite. Researchers checked every known satellite position for that date and time. None were in the right location. The frequency was also protected for radio astronomy, meaning no satellite should have been transmitting on it. 1. Satellite theory, debunked. 2. Aircraft reflection, debunked. 3. Ground-based interference, debunked. 4. Equipment malfunction, debunked. Second theory, it was an aircraft reflecting a signal. The geometry did not work. The signal characteristics did not match any known reflection pattern. Third theory, it was interference from Earth. The big ear had 2 feed horns that observed the same patch of sky 6 minutes apart. The signal appeared in only one horn. If it were local interference, it would have appeared in both. Every mundane explanation has been systematically eliminated. Fourth theory, equipment malfunction. The telescope was functioning perfectly. The data was clean. No anomalies in any other readings from that night. Antonio Paris proposed in 2017 that hydrogen clouds around 2 passing comets could explain it. He published a paper. Other scientists reviewed it. Comets hydrogen rejected. The consensus. The comets were not in the right position, and they could not generate a signal of that intensity. His theory was widely rejected. So what does that leave us with? If you thought that was disturbing, you are not ready for this. The WOW signal came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius. More specifically, it originated from a region of sky near the star group Chi Sagittarii, roughly 120 light-years from Earth. The signal came from the direction of one of the densest star regions visible from Earth. Now, there is nothing particularly special about that star group itself. No known exoplanets had been catalogued there at the time. But what is interesting is the broader context. That region of the sky sits along the galactic plane, the dense band of stars that forms the disk of our Milky Way galaxy. If you were an alien civilization trying to maximize the number of stars and potentially inhabited worlds that might receive your signal, you would aim directly along the galactic plane. It is the cosmic equivalent of shouting down a crowded hallway instead of into an empty room. Sagittarius, 120 light years. And here is another detail that keeps astronomers up at night. The signal was narrowband, extremely narrowband. Natural sources of radio emission in space tend to be broadband, spread across many frequencies. Narrowband signals, concentrated on a single frequency, are almost exclusively produced by technology, by machines, by something engineered. And the next piece of this puzzle, that is where it gets truly insane. Let me pause here, because this next part changes the entire picture. For the WOW signal to have reached Earth at the intensity it was recorded, the transmission would have required an extraordinary amount of power. Scientists calculated that if the signal originated from a star system roughly 200 light-years away and was broadcast in all directions equally, the transmitter would have needed to output approximately 2 gigawatts of power on a single frequency. 2 gigawatts. To put that in perspective, that is more than the total output of most power plants on Earth. But here is where it gets interesting. If the signal was beamed directionally, aimed specifically at our region of space, using something like a focused antenna or a phased array, the power requirement drops dramatically. A focused transmission would require technology we already understand. Humanity itself has broadcast narrowband signals into space that, at sufficient distance, would look remarkably similar to the WOW signal. Our Arecibo message, sent in 1974, was a focused narrowband transmission aimed at a star cluster. Power focus, beam signal. If we could do it in 1974, a civilization even slightly more advanced than ours could do it with ease. As physicist Enrico Fermi once asked, where is everybody? The technology required to produce the WOW signal is not science fiction. It is not magic. It is engineering that we ourselves are approaching. And that realization makes the silence that followed even more unsettling. Now forget everything I just said about the silence being strange, because there is an explanation that actually makes perfect sense, and it is far more chilling than any natural cause. What if the signal was never meant to be repeated? What if it was a one-time beacon, a single pulse fired into the darkness? Think about it from the perspective of an alien civilization. Broadcasting a continuous signal requires enormous resources. You need power, infrastructure, maintenance, for potentially thousands or millions of years. But a rotating beacon, one that sweeps across different parts of the galaxy like a cosmic lighthouse, would only illuminate any given star system for a brief window. 72 seconds is exactly what a rotating beacon would produce. The signal arrives once, announces your existence, and then the beam moves on to the next target. By the time the receiver tries to find it again, the beacon has already swept past. Rotating beacons sweep gone. This is not wild speculation. In 2022, researchers at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics published models showing that a rotating beacon strategy would be the most energy-efficient way for a civilization to announce itself to the galaxy. One brief shout into the void, then silence. Then the beam comes around again, maybe in 100 years, maybe in 1,000. We just happen to be listening at the right moment, and we might not hear it again in our lifetime. But here is the question nobody wants to ask out loud. Remember at the beginning of this video, when I said the most rational minds on Earth cannot rule out the possibility that something was trying to talk to us. This is where that statement becomes terrifyingly real. The WOW signal checks every single box on SETI criteria for a candidate extraterrestrial signal. 1. Narrowband frequency. Check. 2. Hydrogen line 1420 MHz. Check. 3. Non-terrestrial origin. Check. 4. No natural explanation. Check. 5. Single source, fixed location. Check. Every box, all of them. And yet, because it was never repeated, it cannot be confirmed. That is the cruelest paradox in the history of space science. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The scientific method requires repeatability. You find something extraordinary, you need to find it again. But what if the nature of the signal itself makes repetition impossible? What if it was designed to be heard only once? The WOW signal is the strongest candidate for alien contact humanity has ever recorded. That is not hyperbole. That is the assessment of multiple SETI researchers. Strongest candidate ever recorded. And yet it sits in a kind of scientific limbo. Too strong to dismiss. Too singular to confirm. Comment which explanation you believe is the most likely, natural, or artificial. I bet most of you already know what you think, and that answer says more about you than about the signal itself. So where does that leave us? Nearly 50 years later, the WOW signal remains exactly what it was on that August night in 1977. A 72-second anomaly that matched the hydrogen frequency perfectly, originated from a fixed point in the constellation Sagittarius, defied every natural explanation, and then disappeared into silence. The most tantalizing whisper the universe has ever offered us. Jerry Amon, the man who wrote that famous word in the margin, spent the rest of his career cautiously optimistic but scientifically disciplined. He never claimed it was aliens, but he also never stopped believing it could be. I keep looking for the explanation that makes it all make sense. I haven't found it yet, and maybe that is the most honest thing anyone has ever said about the WOW signal. We do not know, we might never know, but we have not stopped listening. Right now, as you watch this, radio telescopes around the world are scanning the sky, waiting for another signal that might come in 72 seconds or 72 centuries. The universe spoke once. It spoke in hydrogen. It spoke for exactly the duration we would expect from a fixed source in deep space. And then it went quiet. Listen, wait, hope, wonder. The truth is stranger than anything you could make up. If you made it this far, comment WOW signal to prove you stayed until the end. Because now you know something that 99% of people will never understand. The most important message humanity may have ever received lasted barely longer than a minute, and we are still trying to hear it again. The truth is stranger than anything you could make up. Subscribe if you want to keep discovering.